All right, what is up, everybody? Coming in to recap the Niners and the Jets, the final game in week one, Monday Night Football out in Santa Clara. The 49ers topped the Jets 32-20, and really the last touchdown the Jets got was garbage time. So, Niners came out and they played 4 quarters of football. The Jets looked really fast and really energetic, which is to be expected in the first quarter. The first couple of drives, they were flying around. A lot of excitement. They've been waiting 2 years for this moment. But the Niners just hung with it, and they continued to pound the ball and rack up a bunch of rushing yards and played 4 quarter football. And the Jets just couldn't hang with them. So we're going to break down a little bit more of the game, and then I'm going to touch on who I believe gets the player of the week for offense, defense, and special teams. So before we jump into this, like, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts and takes, and we'll dive right in. So as I was saying, Niners topped the Jets 32-20. Only crazy stat line in this game really was Jordan Mason, undrafted running back, goes for almost $150 and looked like a dominant running back. And you got to give credit to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They have this uncanny ability to just just pick up running backs that are undrafted and turn them into week to week superstars. I mean, we've seen this countless times before with players like Raheem Mostert and Elijah Mitchell, now Jordan Mason. How many times have we seen it? And it's just a testament to Kyle Shanahan and his running scheme. They've done a great job with being able to identify those powerful one-cut backs where, if they've got zone to the right, they kind of strafe to the right and they find that hole and they put their foot down and they burst through it. And so, super exciting to see Jordan Mason do that. He's looked good the past couple years when he gets playing time, and now he gets a moment to shine and shares a nice moment with his mom before the game, breaking her the news, and he goes out and performs. And he balls, and he was the best player on the field tonight. So that's super exciting. Another thing that kind of stood out is the Niners' offensive line. There was a lot of questions about how they would hold up, and this Jets defense is very good. I mean, they've got a really great ability to defend the pass and get pass rush. They're not super built for the run. And, the saga of Trent Williams throughout this offseason, he wanted his new deal. And finally, they closed that a couple days ago. But you were worried about how this Niners offensive front was going to look, especially without Trent Williams there. But you don't really know any of the other names, and they've just done a good job of piecemealing it together, and they look great tonight. I mean, they were consistently shoving the New York Jets back and picking up good chunk runs on first downs, and if they were stuck in a further down in distance later in the drive, they could still pick up a good 8 to 9, and it just kept them ahead of the chains throughout the entire game, which is a huge reason as why they pulled out the victory tonight. That kind of raises a question with the Jets defense. We've seen this over the past couple years. I mean, they've got a great secondary with Sauce Gardner, obviously one of the best corners in the league, one of the only players to be voted All-Pro first team in their first 2 years. Micah Parsons being another one. But you don't see this team defending the run. And ironically, that's what they've had to do the past few years. They usually are playing, trailing in the game, which is when teams tend to pound the rock more, which doesn't really let them showcase their strength, which is defending the pass. And, they still look pretty good over the past few years, which is a testament to how good that defense is. They fly around and they're pretty good sure tacklers. But you would just like to see the offense finally give them a little bit of room to work. Because I believe if you get down on the Jets, you're going to have a tough time coming back. It's evident that that secondary is nothing to play with. Brock Purdy didn't do anything crazy, and they've got Ayuk, they got Kittle, they got Samuel. So they have the weapons to definitely gash that Jets secondary, and you just didn't see a whole lot of open yards. There were times as the game went on when their run game was super strong and they could just play action. They would find guys over the middle if Purdy got the time in the pocket, which he had a decent amount of. You just wonder, how much of this is first game jitters. Aaron Rodgers obviously hasn't played in almost 2 years. They haven't gotten any snaps together. Mike Williams is new. Both of their tackles are new, at least playing together. And Monday Night Football, all the hype is on you. Aaron Rodgers said, we know if we lose, it's going to be same old Jets, but if we win, it's going to be Super Bowl. So there's going to be crazy overreactions for either result. And you just wonder how much is this like first game jitters, a little bit of inexperience, kind of shaking the rust off, especially for Rodgers, because he had times tonight where it's like, man, that Rodgers hits that throw 9 out of 10 times, and he either skip it or a little bit to the right, and I tend to believe that it is more of the pregame jitters. You can't expect to not play football for 2 years. It's any job. If you took a couple weeks off, we just got back from 2-week vacation or staycation. We didn't do anything, but getting back into the swing of things at work, it might take you a day or two, and in this case, a week or two. Because I still saw throws from Aaron Rodgers like, yeah, this guy can still spin it. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time for a reason. And I would expect them to catch some steam as the weeks go on. So if I'm a Jets fan, I would not worry. You got to also remember you're coming into Santa Clara and playing the defending NFC champions who barely lost the Super Bowl last year and have been the best team in the NFC for the past few years. So I think that the expectations got a little bit skewed with how we thought that Aaron Rodgers is there, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Breece Hall, that vaunted defense. We forgot that they're going up against one of the best teams in the NFL, and the Niners came out and they did what they should have done. And they won the game handedly. And so if you're the Niners, business as usual. If you're the Jets, you're like, we just got to move on and we'll get it next week. Because that team will catch fire. That is almost for sure. Another thing on the Niners, speaking about defense, they get rid of Steve Wilkes. Before him, with Saleh and D'Amico, they were one of the best defenses in the league by far. And it seemed like that D kind of might be getting a little bit of that swagger back. Fred Warner was flying across the field. That guy looks like Predator from AVP. Every time I see him, that's all I can think. And he plays like it too. He plays like a hunter, and he's hunting where that ball is, and he's going to take you down no matter what. He had an amazing punch out on Breece Hall. And he's a multiple all-time all-pro or multiple all-pro selection for a reason. And that's why he's one of the highest paid linebackers, is because he's one of the best. And so Niners D showed up to play. And that's a great sign, because that's ultimately what bit them in the butt during the Super Bowl, even though they did play pretty good. But if they can get that defense back to top 3, at least top 5, there's no reason that this team, if it stays healthy, shouldn't make the Super Bowl. And speaking of staying healthy, that has just been the Achilles heel for the 49ers over the past few years. They play such a physical brand of football that they bang themselves up in the process. Teams tend to lose after they play in the Niners because they get so beat up. But the Niners inflicting all that pain, in turn, bangs them up. So obviously, with any team, injuries are such a wild card, and you hate to see them. It's the worst thing in sports. But if this team can stay healthy, man, they are just so stacked and they get on a roll. I'd love to see them peaking around week 13, 14, so they carry that momentum into the playoffs. Sometimes you see them peak around week 5, week 6, and they get on these rolls, but you can lose a little bit of steam by the time you get to the playoffs because, all hot streaks run out. So I'm not sure how serious Christian McCaffrey's calf injury is. I know that it was a surprise inactive. So, you heard him a couple weeks ago saying if it was a game week, I'd be playing. And then a couple weeks later, he's not playing. So I don't know if they had a setback or if they're just erring on caution. I tend to believe they're probably erring more to the side of caution because you got 17 games to play this year plus the playoffs. This guy's a workhorse, and you're going to ride him all the way to hopefully the Super Bowl. So it doesn't seem like the greatest idea to push it in week 1 when you still got a long season, especially if they felt comfortable that they could beat the Jets without him. And obviously, they knew what they had in Jordan Mason, seeing him in practice every day. So they probably made the right choice. Obviously, they got the win. You let Christian McCaffrey heal. You get Jordan Mason some extra reps. So now moving forward, if you need to spell Christian McCaffrey a little bit during the game, you can, bring Mason in and he's got fresh game reps and he can play. Putting up a $150 on a good defense in your first start as an NFL player, I don't care who you are. That's nerve-wracking, and he backed it up. He looked really, really good. Kind of tying in this Jordan Mason story with overall how the Niners have built their team, I think you got to give the utmost credit to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and also Adam Peters when he was there. He's now the GM of the Commanders. They do such a great job of drafting late round picks and developing them into stars. I mean, how many players do they have on their team? Debo and Kittle aren't late round picks, but they're not first round picks. And then you have all these running backs that they find. Obviously, Brock Purdy. They just do such an incredible job. Fred Warner, Hufunga. They do such a good job of finding these players outside of the first round and developing them into all-pro players or Pro Bowl players. I don't think it gets enough credit because on the flip side, which is ironic, their first-round picks haven't been the greatest. Obviously, they got Nick Bosa. But for every Nick Bosa, they've had a Javon Kinlaw or a Solomon Thomas or a Trey Lance, which, man, if they could have that back, they would. Because imagine when they traded DeForest Buckner, instead of taking Javon Kinlaw, they took Tristan Wirfs and, scooted him to right tackle. Imagine have Tristan Wirfs and Trent Williams as your tackles. And instead of taking Solomon Thomas, they opted to either trade down, get some more picks, or take a player that actually did hit. And obviously Trey Lance, you get Purdy in the same draft, that one hurts. And the only reason we're not talking about that trade more is because Brock Purdy has been such a success. So the Niners have this funny dynamic where they tend to hit more on their later round picks into stars than they do the first round picks. Could you imagine if this team actually hit on those first round picks? They're one of the best rosters, if not the best, in the NFL, and that's with having those busts. So imagine if this team would be crazy stacked. I imagine they would have won a Super Bowl or two, but we can't live in what if land. It is what it is. And the Niners do a great job of developing later round picks, which is how you're going to succeed in the NFL. You only have one first round pick every year, and you got 6 other rounds where you usually have 6 to 7, sometimes 8 more picks. So when you hit on those guys, it's almost as important, if not more, than hitting on your first round pick because there's more of them. So tip of the hat to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. They know their identity. They're not going to stray from it. And most of the time, it's a success. Couple more things. The week 1 play was pretty sloppy around the league, and you'd expect that, with teams not playing their starters in the preseason as much anymore. You expect there to be a layer of fog over the performances of week 1, especially on offense, because there's so much intricate detail that goes into running an offense. Whereas defense, there's still obviously a lot of scheme to it, but it's a lot of like line up and cover the guy in front of you, or, defeat the block in front of you. There's not a whole lot of like in-depth thinking where as a quarterback, you don't know how teams are going to play you. You don't know the defenses that they're going to run. You don't know, their tendencies, how much they're blitzing, where they tend to blitz from, if they like to play man or zone. You have past years, but it's still, you're not familiar with the personnel they're playing with, and there's no tape to go over, and you're still trying to find your legs. The game is fast. Like, it's like, if they didn't have a highway ramp to get on the highway and you just went from a side street to the highway, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get destroyed. But when you kind of gradually get on the highway, it doesn't seem that bad because you're kind of like slowly merging into traffic at that speed, where when you don't play the preseason, it's just like you got planted on the highway. So I'd expect next week there to be a lot more offensive production. And I hope so, because, hey, nothing is better than a freaking physical fest of a football game. But high-flying action is what brings everybody to the TV. So I'd expect to see an uptick. And it would be curious to see some of these defenses that played really great week 1, Steelers, Patriots, Niners, how they start to do as the year goes on and these offenses ramp up a little bit. To close it out for the night, I want to give my offensive, defensive, and special teams player of the week. And for the offense, we got quarterback Baker Mayfield. Baker was lights out against the Commanders. Almost 300 yards, only 6 incompletions, 4 touchdowns, dropping dimes, eluding sacks. He looked really good. He picked up right where he left off last year. Baker found his home, and it's great to see. You root for the guy. He's an ultra competitor, and they got a setup there in Tampa. I think they might be a little bit underrated. That defense is good. They got a solid offensive line. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, young back and Rashad White, Bucky Irving. One of their draft picks out of Oregon looked electric. So hats off to Baker Mayfield. Great game. Hope he keeps it up. It's fun when he's playing good. It's got to be a fun dynamic in the locker room to have your quarterback be a guy that's probably the one to start a bar fight. He's feisty, doesn't want to lose. Rooting for the guy. It's awesome. Now for defense, this was a tough one. I do want to shout out 2 players before I reveal my pick. Number 1, Tyreek Stevenson, corner for the Bears, had a pick 6 to take the lead against the Titans and had a great rookie season across from Jalen Johnson, their all-pro cornerback. Looked really good. First game after his rookie year, gets a pick 6 to take the lead and, seal the deal for the Bears against the Titans. So hats off to him. The other one, Keon White. Keon White was just a game wrecker against the Bengals. 2.5 sacks, constantly plug in the middle to stop the run. I mean, this guy, we knew he was a very good run defender and an athletic freak. When the Patriots drafted him, he looked pissed off. I think that's just his mentality. He wants to play football. He wants to hit you. And losing Barmore for an indefinite amount of time and then trading Judon, our 2 best pass rushers right there. We need Keon White to step up, and he did that. And so if this is a sign of things to come, as a Patriots fan, you've got to be so excited, because it's one thing to get pressure on the outside, But when you're plugging up the middle and you're pushing the center and guards back into the quarterback and they can't step up, that's arguably even more important. So hats off to Keon White and Tyreek Stevenson. But my player of the week for defense of week 1 goes to Zach Bond, linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles. 15 tackles, 2 sacks. Really the play that ended the game, or the play that did end the game. He sacked Malik Willis to end the game. And, who else after he was flying around the field? I mean, he looked like a man possessed. They said that he was responsible for was it 40? It was either 40 or 90 touchdowns in high school. And you're like, the linebacker? That's crazy. And that was a position they were really, really weak at last year, was linebacker. They looked slow and uncoordinated. And now they've got this obviously athletic guy playing linebacker. So, great job, Zach Bond. Hope it's a sign of things to come. I root for everybody's success. These guys all have families. This is their profession. You want them to do good. And the NFL's better when you do good. And life's better when everybody's doing good. So, moving on. Special teams. I got Kevontae Turpin for the Dallas Cowboys. 34-yard kick return. 60-yard punt return. A couple others that he almost broke. And this guy was just an X factor. And when you can make special teams play, it's like getting free points. Bill Belichick said that on the Pat McAfee show today. When you get a punt return or a kick return touchdown, not only can you swing field position off of a good return, but it's like free points. You don't go into the game thinking, all right, we're going to get a punt return today, or we're going to get a kick return. No, you're game planning to score on offense. That's why anytime you get defensive touchdowns or special teams touchdowns, it's such a morale boost, and it's such a momentum switcher. And Devontae Turpin was doing just that. And so we've known that he's electric, and he shows it week 1. So I expect teams to try not to kick to him as much. Shout out to Chris Boswell and Jake Moody, kickers for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. Both went 6 for 6 on field goals and were a huge reason their teams won the game. So you got to love it. Kickers usually end up being your highest scorers of the year, which is hilarious because we dump on them. But they're incredibly important. Patriots don't win those Super Bowls if it wasn't for Adam Vinatieri. Or the Ravens don't win all these close games if it wasn't for Justin Tucker. Now the Cowboys got Brandon Aubrey, who's just might, if he stays on this trajectory, he's going to be the greatest kicker of all time. As of right now, he looks like the best kicker in the league. So having 2 kickers that both get you 18 points in the season openers and were a huge reason. I mean, if you take, 18 off of the Niners score tonight, 14 points. They lose the game. Not even factor in extra points. 20 points he's responsible for. So, shout out to them. Got to give the kickers some love. They don't get enough of it. They're like offensive linemen. You only notice them when something bad happens. So, well, that concludes it. Later this week, we're going to dive into each game. We're going to see what to expect and some predictions. And we're going to break down the Thursday night game between the Bills and Dolphins. Huge division game. Could have huge implications for later in the year. And then that'll be on Wednesday. We'll also touch on some Patriots news and see what's going on around there. Kind of want to give them some special attention since that's our team. And then Saturday we'll have a video out on the predictions for the weekend and what to look out for. Had a great time recapping these games and chatting with y'all. Awesome that football is back. Week 1 had a ton of great games. That's all you can ask for. And so it's great to have it back. Comment down below. Let's have some conversations. Hope you guys have a great week and great rest of your night. Peace out.